Chapter 12. In December, Abel began talking to himself. He had done it before, but only internally. Now he spoke out loud, and the sound of his own voice vibrating in his body felt vital. Addressing himself by name, he would give advice, or ask questions and answer them. Sometimes he argued back and forth, Abel with Abel, and even got quite angry when he disagreed with his own opinions. He often found himself hard to convince. He talked aloud to Amanatu, addressing her statue. He assured her that he would see her again and the others he loved. There was no question he'd be getting off the island, though as yet he had no idea how. He was patient, that is, he considered himself patient, because what other love-longing, wife-craving, homesick creature would remain so pacingly calm, so nervously resolute, so crazily sane as long as Abel had? The first real snowfall was a tail deep. Abel made himself snowshoes and went to his book with a homemade shovel in one arm and his spear in the other. He dug the book out of the snow and read chapter 19. By chapter 19, the bear was having its worst of the war. Many had been killed or wounded. It made Abel wonder about civilization, but come to think of it, the owl, who was not civilized, was pretty warlike too. The hero, Captain Burren, was riding home from the battlefield to the one he had waltzed with in the first chapter, the one he loved. It was also winter in the story, and a drunken sergeant was saying things that were foolish and wise and funny. He wished he were hibernating instead of warring. Some of his stalemates made Abel roll around on the page, his cloudy breath exploding in spasms of laughter. It was hard to cover the book when he had finished his reading for the day because the leaves stuck together in frozen sheets. His paws got icy cold. At home, he had to drink some of his wine to dispel the chill in his bones. On his way home from chapter 21, he had a perilous encounter with the owl. But he wasn't caught off guard. Whenever the spear was in his paw, the owl was on his mind, as he, apparently, was always on the mind of the owl. Each one kept a sharp eye out, the would-be killer and the intended victim. Hoping to catch Abel napping, the owl swept down from an old decayed tree. It seemed at home in rotten trees, but Abel had his spear at the ready the moment the owl reached him. The owl swerved off as Abel thrust at it and pretended to fly away defeated, but immediately it swooped down again. This time Abel slashed sideways and thrust viciously upward, and he could feel the point of his knife penetrate the owl's flesh, though the owl made no sound. It only winced, and fending off the sphere with one claw, it ripped off Abel's cape with the other. In a fit of fear and rage, Abel thrust again and again, desperately without plan. His fury so upset and bewildered the owl that it flew upward and roosted on a dead limb of the tree, staring down in disbelief. Instead of making off while he had the advantage, Abel cocked his spear and challenged the owl to descend and fight. The owl continued to stare. "Coward!" Abel screamed, the veins swelling on his neck. "Come down and do battle, bird, reptile, fiend, or whatever kind of villain you are." If the owl was offended at Abel's insults, it didn't show that it was. Solemnly it blinked and stared. "Down with unsightly devils, down with evil of any sort," Abel yelled, and with all his might he foolishly flung his spear at the bird of prey. It struck the branch where the owl stood and fell to the ground. As Abel ran to retrieve his weapon, the owl dived. Abel dodged and raced around the trunk of the tree. The owl couldn't fly in circles any faster than Abel could run, so there was always the tree between them. The chase went on, sometimes reversing direction. This mad carousel so offended the owl's ancient sense of decorum that it grew confused and crashed into the tree. It had to go off somewhere to sit in a huff, unruffle its feathers, and regain its ruthless composure. Abel grabbed his spear and cape and scampered home. By now Abel owned 3 of the owl's feathers. He was quite sure that they were the owl's. Without waiting to catch breath after his heroic skirmish, he began uttering over these detested feathers the most horrible imprecations imaginable. Heaven forfend that the owl should have suffered a fraction of what Abel wished it. Abel wished that its feathers would turn to lead so it could fall on its head from the world's tallest tree, that its beak would rot and become useless even for eating mush, that it should be blind as a bat and fly into a dragon's flaming mouth, that it should sink in quicksand mixed with broken bottles very slowly to prolong its suffering, and much more of the same sort. December grew steadily colder. Abel began tearing margins from the pages of his book and using this paper to fill the chinks in his doorway whenever the stones were set in place. Even so, the cold lanced through, especially when it was windy.